Welcome back to the Rugged Revival podcast. We're absolutely blessed to have with us here today Brennan Edwards. Brennan is a singer-songwriter hailing from Winchester, Virginia. Brennan's music is a heartfelt, relatable blend of country, bluegrass and folk, all delivered with Brennan's unmistakably awesome, soulful voice. Brennan's easily one of my favourite artists right now, so I'm really pleased to be able to catch him in his busy week and busy moments right now. And I encourage anyone to go out and listen to his music because it's something that I absolutely love at the moment. So how are you, Brennan? How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. Great.
Awesome. How's your week going so far?
Been good. My wife is fully she has fully dove into the world of bread. So we've had a lot of bread. We had bagels this morning. Homemade bagels.
Awesome, man. So
it's been a good week on that front.
Well, that sounds an interesting week, better than mine, mate. So we'll dive straight into things. I think people wanting to get to know you and your background in terms of what you've been up to and who you are, particularly. You're from Virginia. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about your upbringing and what you're currently doing.
Currently, trying to get organized. I mean, that's pretty much the bulk of my time lately. Doing gigs on the weekend and trying to stay busy with that. And I've kind of had like the last 3 years has been sort of like an autopilot. Like I got into a pretty good routine of doing the same kind of gigs and having like just a set routine of how that worked. And it's been good, but I guess there comes a time when you got to move forward from what's just easiest and most convenient. And I guess what's been holding me back from that is the organization of everything with booking and staying up to date on like putting out content and everything like that, which I'm not very inclined to do naturally. Making the videos and stuff like that, but trying to turn it more into a work schedule that is like manageable.
No, that makes sense. And I speak to a lot of people and artists over the last few weeks and months where it's difficult trying to be not just the artist now. And something that you put out on Instagram this week made me laugh. It was the Seinfeld skit about, not just being the artist, but actual, putting out the content and being a social media manager as well. So is that, like you say, is that the hardest thing that you're kind of having to put up with at the moment?
I don't know, because for a couple weeks there, I found it really easy. Or I don't know, it comes and goes. But yeah, I'd say it's that kind of stuff is the hardest for me, just because I don't know. I don't know what it is about it that's so daunting. But taking videos of yourself, and I feel like there's a lot of self-examination that goes into it, or that just comes with it. Versus
Sure.
like, I don't feel that way about playing shows, because you're kind of just in the moment and you're just doing it. You don't necessarily go back and review what you just did. You take a video of yourself playing and then you got to watch it and make sure you think it's good enough. It's like, well, of course it's not good enough.
No, that's great. I mean, the first time I probably kind of started listening to your stuff was when you were doing the Instagram lives. And is it the Walking Mall that you spend a lot of time with your recordings and playing? And, I found that really interesting. I jumped on one of your lives not too long ago just to kind of have a real good listen. And it was amazing.
I was busking.
You were busking? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So is that something that you regularly do then?
It's something I should do more regularly. I used to a lot more, and over this summer, I didn't spend like any time out there doing it, which it's almost like free money. If you're not doing anything and it's a nice day, you go sit down there and just play and see if you can make some money. And it's kind of weird how it goes because, I feel like the first 20 minutes you get nothing, just people passing by. Um and then all once somebody breaks the seal and throws something in the bucket, it's like then people start. And it you would think that would be like they're encouraged by seeing other people do it or like seeing it in there. But I don't think that most of the people that do it, you see them get out a couple bucks 50 feet away, and they didn't just see anybody throw it in. So it's, I don't know, it's a weird thing, but I should definitely have taken the opportunity this year a lot more than I did. So we had these weird warm days going into fall, and I kind of went into hyperdrive with it. Like I'm gonna go down there like as often as I can before it gets cold. Um, but it's nice. It's like a pedestrian mall. It used to be a through street for cars to drive way back in the day, but they turned it into, you know, basically a giant sidewalk. You know, it's like the main downtown area for all the shops and stuff. So we're lucky to have it for busking. If you go to like other, big cities and stuff like that, I busked in Atlanta when I was there once, and made a little bit of money, but it's like you're fighting all the noise, and not everywhere has this, I guess is what I'm getting at. So it's a nice thing uh for musicians.
Definitely, mate. It's I mean, I've seen recently the stuff that you've been putting out, and it seems like you've had a bit of an explosion, and you can put it into your own words in terms of, how things are moving forward. It seems like things are happening, and you're picking up a lot of gigs. And I'm looking at you on your Facebook and your Instagram, and you seem to be playing most weekends now. So have you kind of found a scene where you're playing more regularly, more at the weekend, and at proper gigs? I mean, what's the scene like where you are at the moment?
Like here in Winchester, the scene is really great for being an independent musician. Now, like if you're as far as, for anyone uh who's not a musician themselves, not out there gigging and stuff, it's kind of hard to understand like how different types of gigs work. But you kind of have these like hometown, like small town gigs where you get a flat rate, so they pay you X amount of money to come and play for X amount of time. There's no ticket sales. You're just like hired entertainment for people that are coming, regular patrons, versus like a music venue where it's centered around the show and people are just buying tickets to come see a show. The easiest way to go about it is to do those flat rate shows at like a bar and grill, at a brewery, at, just a bar. um that's like job security, because you know what you're gonna make. You just show up, you do your job, and you get paid. And that's for the last like 2 years. I've been pretty booked up every weekend with those. Don't The thing is, like I was talking about, getting better with like organization and stuff. I play a lot of gigs that I don't really advertise well. I don't like put a lot of, because it, believe it or not, I'm sure you understand, but to anyone who's listening that doesn't understand, it's a lot of work to put into advertising, because it takes the time to make it, and then the cross post it. It ends up being like, if you were to dedicate and that's the other thing, you got to be focused, the type of person who can like, get on their social media without getting caught in the reels and all that stuff. Um, and there's a lot of roadblocks that come into play. So it ends up being one of those things where you're not really inclined to really worry so much about advertising and content and stuff like that. But I guess it's all about self-discipline. But um but yeah, of course, if you're doing like ticketed shows, it's a lot more incentivized you have a lot more of an incentive to try to push it and get people to come out, because otherwise they're not going to. Versus if I'm playing at X, um, just insert any bar and grill or place, they have their like built-in crowd. I'll post it up on my Facebook and maybe my Instagram story, but it's hard to justify like saturating your news feed on everything with like a month's worth of. But then here's the other thing. If you have a website with like a touring schedule, then that's where you would post all that stuff. But that's one of the things I'm working on right now, is trying to get my website built and basically get kind of the routine I've built of into a more organized routine going forward. And to roundabout answer your question, I think, if I can remember where I got off on this tangent, there has been like an uptick in kind of like, you know, with what I'm doing, similar to when I put out my first release. There was like a big uptick in like, people's interest in my music and wanting to book me and stuff like that. But with this, it's like the next step, which is like you start actually doing like real touring shows, or trying to, and that's just a whole nother world, you know, versus like the easy gig where, you just going and getting paid to show up and play. And um it takes a team. It takes a village to do all that, the next step of stuff.
Do you have
And
a manager that's helping? Because I saw there was a booking guy on
yeah,
your
so
business.
now I've just taken on a manager and a booking agent in the last like month. Um, so yeah, so it's like a weird in between spot I'm in right now, of like moving from one to the next
Yeah,
stage of
yeah.
things.
That must be difficult for you, mate, to, like you say, going from doing your thing and kind of making it as good as you can, to finding that next level and getting the support you need to get organised, because it's only a finite amount of time within your week to do that and to create the music and do everything else. It must be incredibly difficult. But I mean, how did you get into music in the first place, Brennan? Just kind of dialing it back slightly. Are you from a musical family?
So on my mom's side, this gets mentioned a lot more because of, and I think it's because of the type of music that I play, and it makes sense to go along with it. But um, my mom's side of the family they're all into bluegrass or some variation of bluegrass. When I was a kid, they were all like pretty much strictly playing bluegrass. They were very like, they weren't really much into anything else. They weren't playing anything else. Um, all of her siblings, and my grandma plays fiddle a little bit and stuff like that. Um, so on her side of the family, everybody basically but her, she paints and stuff. She doesn't play any instruments though. That's like the $1 million question she gets, is like, "Do you play anything?" And but so they all play, and I grew up with them playing bluegrass, but more so, I was more influenced by my dad, which doesn't really get like mentioned, just because, like in all the bios and the introductions and stuff, they always mention my bluegrass roots. And um, I kind of just, for the sake of simplicity, have left it alone. But more of my influence was from my dad, with the stuff he was listening to. He also plays guitar. He was in a band in high school. He was actually in a hardcore band. Now that's, who even knows what that really means, because back then it was a totally different thing. It was than what it means today. But um, he was into he's into like, grunge and heavy metal, and more in the grunge side of things. But we listened to all the spectrum of rock, was my main influence as a kid. So we were always going to concerts. Um, More so, it was that side of things that I was into when I was younger. So, we went and saw Slipknot, Deftones. Uh, my first concert was Motley Crue.
Cool.
I've seen Black Sabbath, Def Leppard. Um, who else? Korn. I can't even remember. We went to a lot of concerts when I was young. And then on top of that, like sprinkled throughout, I started playing the mandolin sometime in elementary school, and I would go to bluegrass festivals with my grandma and my aunts and uncles. And I enjoyed that stuff. I enjoyed going, I enjoyed playing it, but it definitely wasn't like the majority of what I was into growing up. It kind of flipped sometime around like middle school, where I started to like my interest started to go more towards traditional music and old school country. And so my biggest influences for that were um I always liked David Allan Coe. I always liked his music and Conway Twitty. So I remember it being in middle school and like having an MP3 player with like all this other stuff I was listening to, but then, you know, David Allan Coe and Conway Twitty. And I didn't really know anything else though. Like I didn't like radio country. Um that was like, popular at the time. But of course, like then you hear Hank Williams Jr. I loved Hank Jr. as soon as I heard him early on. Um and then it was Hank Sr. Hank Williams Sr. was really the thing that like uh really got me into like old time, old school country music. And like all from the time I started listening to him till now, like that's the majority of my music library is Hank Williams. So, but everything else kind of just comes along, and also I got to include Whiskey Myers. Whiskey Myers was like my first introduction to the independent, like alt country, southern rock scene that I'd almost say that I'm kind of becoming a part of, because that's different than what I'm doing, but they're definitely like a big, I would call them, pioneers of what's currently going on with what's popular, and taking this like subgenre independent scene into what's now pop culture. You know what I mean? And that was, around middle school. I remember my cousin showed me Broken Window Serenade. And then I went to see Leonard Skinner at this county fair, like an hour from here, with my buddy Cody. And this was like a month after I started listening to Whiskey Myers, and I didn't even know this, but they were opening. So then I got to see him live and I was hooked. Um and then, like I say, it kind of just snowballs from there. It with the way the world is today with technology, it's just a rabbit hole of good music.
No, it's really interesting. I mean, you mentioned so many genres there, like you say, going all the way back. But I mean, I hear a lot of, like you said, traditional country and the music that you're putting out now. Your new EP Stones that have literally just come out, hasn't it? I was listening to it again today, and it's very introspect. So it's there's a lot of kind of messages about letting go, personal growth, and things like moving forward. Kind of dropping those kind of issues behind you. And it's interesting. The music that you talk about with Whiskey Myers, Leonard Skinner, and I'm hearing a lot more of that with 49 Winchester and those sort of acts coming out now. And I'm probably going a long-winded way back around, but I'm interested to hear what kind of stuff is on your radio, because in the UK, it's very hard to get away from the pop country scene. So if we're talking
Yeah.
about like Morgan Wallen, and that's just plastered all over the place in the UK. And I find it very hard to try and find stations that actually play some of the lesser known artists or the more traditional artists, and people that play your type of music. So I have to go online and listen to internet radio stations. Like in Texas, there's a great station I always mention called the Ranch, and there's a lot of great music on there. But is it the same where you are? Is it difficult to kind of find stations that are playing your kind of music, or is it all quite commercial where you are?
I'd say it's not even worth trying, because you can, but it's that's the thing about radio is like it's such a gamble, or it can either be a big gamble or a lot of waiting around, or you know exactly what you're gonna get. So these 5 stations that are like prominent in my area, I know what they're gonna play. Like the rock station, I remember working at this cabinet shop back in 2020 and or 2019, whatever it is. But I remember I realizing just how much of clockwork the rotation was. And it was like, if I came in one day and there was 2 guys that I worked with, and if one got there first, he was gonna put on his Spotify. And funny enough, that was how I found out about Coulter Wall, was his Spotify rotation. I was like, who is this? And people throw this around, and anymore I have a hard time like not knowing this is like a regular, in his 30s adult. But at the time I legitimately thought that it was an 80-year-old man.
I think everyone
People,
thought that.
yeah, well, people say that about him and about other people. And now that I don't know if it's just because I know that he's not, it seems a little exaggerated. But then looking back, not that he, it does sound very traditional. He does sound very distinctly old and old timey in a great way. But I remember thinking that it was like some underground, unheard of old man that was just a badass. And I was like, where do you find this kind of music? And it was Motorcycle by Coulter Wall. I'll never forget it. And but then if the other guy got there first, he was putting on 99.3. And I remember, this one week he was getting there early every day, and it was like a whole week of having to listen to it all day. And it was legitimately the same exact songs at the same exact times. I could be like, well, it's almost 11:45. It's time for, Dream On by Aerosmith to come on. And but then, there's been times where I was stuck with just radio, where like, I don't know, I didn't have a way to play music off my phone driving around. So I would, I'd experiment around and try out, all these different stations. And every now and again you land on you just happen to be in an area where you're picking up this weird station. And I'm like, well, what is this? And they're playing Gin Smoking Lies uh by Turnpike Troubadours. I think that's the title of it. At 10:30 at night. And I remember that sitting in this Walmart parking lot somewhere, and that song came on some random radio station. I'm like, well, I guess somebody's playing, you know, this kind of off the wall, good independent music, or, I don't, for lack of a better term, independent music. And then if I go on my Spotify for artists and look, there's some stations that are spinning my stuff, but it's like just a handful, and they're like in random places. So I guess, you know, it happens, but like I say, it's just not worth trying to find one that does. At least not to me. I got, I just use Apple Music, and sometimes I just listen to what I have, and then every now and again I get like a wild hair where I'm like, just randomly like I want to find some new music today, and I'll, just let it go off into the algorithmic, cycle and show me some new stuff. But no, the radio here is like you're saying. It's but at the same time it's weird because um I was listening to, I went through and was like, well, let's see what they're I did this the other day. It's funny you're asking me because I don't do it very often, but I was like, let's see what's coming on the radio nowadays. And I put on the local big country station, and garbage. Um Not to be a hater, but it was like the typical stuff. Um Stuff I don't even know who these guys are. They just sound like guys that were really popular 5 years ago. But then I put on the pop station, and I had some help came on. Post Malone and Morgan Wallen. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
my brain started going crazy because I'm like, this is like a Run DMC, Aerosmith like moment in history where they're like breaking the genre for charting and stuff like that. And I just started thinking about, financially, that's crazy, because they're they're getting put on country radio, they're getting put on pop radio. Like, it's everywhere you go. You should go and walk into a business, you might hear it playing. And I just thought that was pretty crazy that it gave me some insights into the game they're playing there pretty big
Yeah.
time. But then Stick Season came on after that. And I was like, a year ago, this was like an underground smash hit. And it wasn't something, I mean, at least I don't know. I didn't know that. If it was, I didn't know that Noah Khan was that uh popular in the mainstream. I know he's kind of respected amongst like the pop scene, uh, before his big breakout and stuff, but he was on like our local pop station, and I was like, that's pretty crazy to think about how that, because I would have considered that to be more of the, underground scene.
Yeah.
Um,
The more traditional stuff. It's interesting because I was
a little
speaking
more
to,
traditional.
yeah, one of the guys that we had on a previous podcast, Josh Mitchum, who's from Kentucky, and he plays a lot of festivals now outside of Kentucky and in places like Florida. And he was saying, it's very difficult for guys outside of the kind of Nashville machine to kind of break into the industry and to break into these bigger kind of gigs that people are picking up. And I don't know if there's a little bit of snobbery going on from Nashville, or whether that's just the way things are kind of manufactured in that way there. I mean, are you finding it difficult to kind of break out of Virginia, or are you more comfortable kind of in your zone where you are right now? Because I suppose you're quite early on into what you're doing, aren't you?
You know, um, it's hard to say because to me it feels like it's been so long since I started gigging at all. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, depending on what perspective I look at it, it all kind of is just coming out of infancy and leading up to getting to this point where I feel like it's coming out of its infancy, my like music career. Um, like it's actually just now starting to take shape. But just before it got to this point, it feels like it had felt like it was starting to get to be like a seasoned thing for me. But now it's like, you reach this milestone, you step over that threshold, and it's like you're back to a new form of, you really realize that you're actually just stepping into like your first real steps. I didn't even realize, obviously I didn't think I was doing anything that crazy, but I thought, I didn't think of it the same way. It's weird how it can feel more like I just was an infant who's now learning how to walk, is the way I feel about it now. And I guess, you know, I guess that's just kind of, it's weird what your self-awareness can feel like in it all. But that's a good thing, because at least I think so. Because I think a lot of people had this, and people talk about this, having this mindset of like, if I get to this place, it'll all be good. Like, if I could just do this, it would all, work out. I'd be happy with everything. But, there's no like destination. There's just multiple stops. There's just like higher points you can go. And I guess it's kind of refreshing to know that there's a lot more thresholds to cross. Cuz you know, it's not so much this the that I'm not so much worried about a sense of like, I don't know, stagnancy is a really scary thing. The feeling that you're not going to be able to keep the water flowing, or you don't know how you're going to keep it going. So,
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. Like you say, some people just want to kind of get to the end zone, so to speak, as quickly as they can. But from what I hear and see of what you're doing, you seem a really chilled out guy, and it's just one step at a time, and we'll see where it takes you. It was interesting because as soon as I put the kind of promo out for this particular one, I've never seen so much love for a guest coming on. As soon as the Instagram message went out that you were coming on the show, it must have been half of Virginia commented, liked, and we're engaging with it. And I thought, that's great. You must have a really cool kind of community around you of folk that are supporting you. And I think that's really
yeah.
great. Maybe sometimes you don't see that if you're the artist and you're kind of in the mix of what you're doing. It's hard to kind of see outside of that scope. But from my perspective, I think you've got the most engagement from any guest so far. So I thought that was really interesting. So is that what your community is like? Is it very supportive in terms of new music, new artists, and independent artists?
Yeah. So I would definitely say so, and it's good to hear you say that. We're good to hear that, because a big trouble is the feeling that you're falling through the cracks, like that you're getting forgotten about, and that's certainly not the case here in my hometown. But at times it becomes a thing like, where you get used to what you're doing, and I feel like everybody else does too. So if you just keep doing the same thing in the same places, like, nobody's gonna care for that long. They're still gonna think, what they think about your music and what you're doing, but like the newness wears off for everybody. So there's got to be something more new stuff to pay attention to. But definitely a very supportive community around here. Not just for myself, but we have a lot of other artists from here in Winchester and the surrounding area, and there's a very tight knit community of listeners, and everybody's always doing their best to support as much as they can. Um, and even beyond this area, we have almost like adoptive people. I don't know any other way to put it, any other word to use, but people who aren't even from here, or they might be from an hour and a half away, but they're kind of part of our like Winchester community now, just because of the music scene. Um, but but yeah, I think it's a dangerous thing to be doing things from a place where you feel panicked, like everybody's forgetting about you, or like you're falling through the cracks, you're not doing enough. Like there's a weird fear motivation, and panic motivation creates like, it's just never a good thing. It's like it'll make you hit a brick wall real fast, versus motivation that comes from the positive, which is like, you see the gears start moving, and you kind of just grab it and spin it a little faster, versus when you feel like it's jammed up and you're trying to force it, you know? And so it's good to hear that from the outside perspective, there's a lot of interests and excitement around, the music and stuff like that. Because sometimes it's hard to tell, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, it's a double-edged sword when you think about social media. And I think that's one of the positives. And it was interesting talking to Jared Morris, who we had recently, and he had a positive spin on it to say, well, back in the day before social media, you didn't have the opportunity just to pick up your iPhone or whatever you've got and just film yourself and put it out there. You're in control of the content, and you kind of build your own community, your own fan base overnight, just from putting out and having that degree of control. And I thought, it's a really cool kind of way to look at it. I mean, it must be difficult, I suppose, if you're navigating it on your own. Is there anyone that you kind of looked upon that kind of took you under their wing or showed you some of the ways and how to be successful in terms of what you're doing?
No, there's just been some collaborators, and I think about this, especially lately. I've thought about this often. There's so much power in winging it, and not in like a careless way, but not putting so much, not being too like self-critical, or not putting so much weight behind whether or not you're making the right move in a marketing way. Like my first I did like 3 demos with my friend Mike. He's also my guitar player in my band, but um shout out to Grady Smith for this term. He called somebody this um recently, and it's a perfect word for Mike. He's like a Swiss Army knife of music. Like he DJs around town, he plays in my band, he runs the open mic uh out at this pool hall here in town, which is how I met him. Um, he does his own gigs and stuff, like makes his own music, which is totally different from mine. So he's like super versatile. He plays like basically any instrument. He plays guitar for me, but originally I wanted him to be my bass player. We've had times where our drummer couldn't play a gig and he fills in on drums. And I recorded these 3 demos at his house like early on, and they were kind of just to like for shits and giggles, to like, you know they were just supposed to be like work tapes basically. But and looking back, I find them like a little bit cringy, like sloppy, like I feel like I was, my playing and my singing was sloppy in it, and like kind of careless. And they're out there on YouTube and SoundCloud, but they did super well, especially 10 Chickens and a Dog Crate. That song, the original like demo of that song we did, I posted it on YouTube. It's got like, I don't know, I think it's like over 30,000 views. And this was on a channel that had no following. It had like over 2,000 views within like a week. And like I say, no following, no subscribers. It kind of just took off, was getting shared around, and it really like connected a lot of dots for me, with like me getting on like Radio West Virginia, and then doing Red Barn, and getting like, attention from some of these like bigger platforms. And I mean, he wasn't even expecting me to put it out. You know what I mean? Like we were just trying stuff out, like messing around, recording these songs. And I just threw it out there. And I think there's something to be said about that, doing things that way and not doing it so safe and like calculated. And sometimes I find myself getting stuck in that kind of thinking, just because that's the way the industry works. It's how everybody else is doing it. And it's like you want to keep up with everybody else. But I think there's definitely like a level of authenticity that can like overshadow any planned, marketing and like making the perfect content. But I still find it hard to find the fine line between like just throwing caution to the wind and putting out just stuff that's real, and just when you're feeling it. You know what I mean?
I think people are a bit fed up sometimes of the over polished kind of, the machine manufactured stuff that regularly gets kicked out on the radio. And it's funny you say that, in terms of being self-conscious about the early stuff that you put out. And I was listening to some podcast recently, and I think it was Race Ricketts from Texas that was on, and he was saying, he was trying to do like you did, record, in his buddy's house. And the noise from outside was just unbearable when he's trying to lay down the vocals. So in the end, I think he ended up in a closet just to try and get a clean vocal on one of the tracks. And he put it out there, and it did really well. But it's interesting, you're not in a proper studio at times. You're kind of making best of what you've got, and you're really self-conscious about the music. But it's surprising what people want to hear, and I think it's a lot of the time, especially at the minute, when people have got access to so many things, that they want to hear that authenticity and that kind of realness from the music that you're creating. And I think that's a really cool thing. But in terms of I mean, going onto your Spotify and the stuff that you've released since, Brennan. So your debut album came out in 2023, Till the End of My Days. So that's out there. Talk us through that. How did that come about, mate?
So kind of touching on the local community here, and people who are not even from Winchester but are part of our local community here. There's a guy named Jonathan Mitchum who is from the DC area, about an hour and a half from here. We call him Grandpa. I think Jake Cohn was the first one to call him Grandpa. he's like the grandpa of the local scene. He's a musician himself, and um, he's been a huge supporter of mine, like literally since day one, if not day one, day two. Um, it's funny. The first time I met him, I went to go watch Cole Chaney play here in town at a little bar and grill, and Cole Chaney was in this weird moment of like he had booked this show before he like kind of blew up in a way, and like he booked it 9 months in advance or something, and by the time the show came around, he was doing a lot of touring and stuff, but he still did this show. So it was weird that he was even playing here in town. But this was early on in his like, having his first big moments. And I went to see him there. I was shocked that he was playing at this bar and grill here in town. And Johnny was there, and I met him. I talked to him for a while, and ever since then, um, he's been like a huge supporter of mine. And he actually, had for a long time was offering to help me, get to a studio and to fund a record and of some sort. And it ended up being, I went to see Lost Dog Street Band in DC in late 2022, and I had no one to go with. I had 2 tickets, and I brought Johnny, and I didn't actually we didn't know each other super personally up until that point. We knew each other through the music scene and everything. And then after that night, we became a lot closer. And but that night he offered to take me to the studio and record, like he'd cover the whole he'd front the whole project. So he paid for that whole thing to get recorded. And when I went in, so we planned end of January, we did it, of 2023. And when I went in, I didn't have enough stuff ready to record really. Um this was after I had recorded those 3 demos, so I could have done those, but I don't know, I just really wanted to hold out on those. And so I'd say like the majority of that record got written, like the songs were finished within a month of recording it. They were either pieces of stuff that I had that I just like went ahead and finished, or like I showed up to the studio and had written the song but hadn't dialed it in yet, and we did it all there. So kind of just got thrown together in a way, and they were all brand new songs to me. And that's pretty much the case with this new one too. Was the only one that was basically ready. I had played it at shows and stuff, was Me and the Devil. And it didn't get played a lot. I played it on Red Barn, but kind of the same way. It was like, very new songs. I have a whole catalog of songs I play at my shows, originals, that haven't been recorded at all, that are like I could take them to a studio right now and know exactly how I want them done. And with my first record and the newest one, it was not the case. They were all like brand new, like they got like refined at the studio. So that's interesting to think about, especially like I say about this catalog of songs that I have ready to go. I probably have an album. I definitely have a whole album worth. You know, I could do 10, 15 songs that are unreleased that I play at shows all the time. That I could go and I know how their arrangements will go relatively. And none of my releases have been like that so far, which is a weird thing. Everything that I've released, when I went and recorded it, it was still like the song was in its infancy. So originally that Till the End of My Days was gonna be a whole like 10-song album, but just time and resources got cut short. So we cut it down to 5 songs. Yeah, I didn't expect the lead track. For one, it wasn't gonna be called Till the End of My Days. Like the EP, the whole thing wasn't gonna have like a title track. It was just gonna be I was gonna call it like Volume 1 or something. But one thing led to another. I named it after that song. And I was never expecting that song to be like a breakout from the rest of it. It has way more success than any of the other songs. So I think I kind of foreshadowed that in the final days of releasing it, just because Grady really hopped on it, and like that was like the first, like amongst me and Grady and our friendship and everything started with him, checking out my music and promoting that song. Like he, shouted it out basically and shared, you know, the video of me playing that on Red Barn, and it like set the stage for that song to just take off anyway. But either way, I think that it might have just been that way. It seems people really gravitate towards it. So
Definitely. It's done really well, and it's on our Spotify playlist. We really loved it. It's funny you mentioned a few kind of outlets like Red Barn Radio, Radio Double WV, and Appalachia Untold. I've seen you a couple of times on there, and I think they're really good outlets to discover new music, new artists, and people that you wouldn't necessarily come across online. And I've come across obviously the likes of yourself, but Nathan Best, Jake Cohn, you mentioned a minute ago, and he seems to be doing extremely well at the moment. Is he someone that you know? Is he someone from the area?
yeah, Jake lives, well, I can't say right up the road anymore because I moved about 30 minutes from where I was, but where where my mom lives is like 5 minutes from Jake's house, maybe 10. But we met Jake. I don't know the whole introduction story with how he met my uncle and stuff, but my uncle Buddy does a bluegrass show once a month on his farm called Bluegrass in the Barn. And I guess Jake and his parents were just coming out to that when he was like, I don't know, between like 10 and 12. And I think he got up and sang White House Road at Bluegrass in the Barn when he was like 11 or 12. And and so my uncle Buddy started giving Jake guitar lessons and and taught Jake guitar for a while. And then, he started gigging around here and stuff. And we did a handful of shows together, and we played up at Bluegrass in the Barn together a couple times. Um and he had like people knew about it here, and they would go crazy when they saw Jake play and stuff. But And then he did that Radio West Virginia video that really blew up.
Yeah,
He did
was
like
it
three.
Lorraine, wasn't it?
I think Frostbite was the one that really, really went crazy. I remember the first time Jake, at least if I remember correctly, it was the first time he played Heart of Stone. Um, me and a guy named Trey Jett used to do shows together all the time, and Jake came to one of our shows in this like little pavilion in the park in Middletown up the road here. There was like a handful of people there. It got like almost rained out. It was pouring rain like right up until we were supposed to start, and like hardly anybody came. But Jake and his dad came, and I'm I was like, I put him on the spot. I was like, Jake, come up here and play something. He comes up and plays some songs, and then I was like, do one more, and then we'll get going again. And he was like, well, there's a new song. I swear, I'm pretty sure it was the first time he ever played it like outside of his bedroom, and it was Hard as Stone. And I remember being like, this is crazy. That was one of the best songs I ever heard. Um, and sure enough, that was one of those three songs that he did that really blew up. So that's definitely a cool story to have. I haven't seen that 3 feet in front of me, in front of like a few people, the first time it ever got played. Um, but yeah, Jake's doing awesome.
He
Doing
is,
all
man. It's and it's funny you mentioned Call to War. You know, if you've not seen Call to War, when you just listen to him, he sounds like a 80-year-old guy. I mean, Jake's voice is just something else. You know, it just doesn't sound like something should come out of a guy that young. It's amazing.
for sure.
But so yeah, I mean, since you've released the Stones EP, it's funny because I'm going online and now I'm seeing other artists cover your music and posting it online. How does that feel? Does that feel a bit surreal, a bit weird?
It definitely felt weirdest when it like the first couple times it happened. Um, I've only seen one so far of this new stuff. I don't know if there's any others that I've missed yet on YouTube or anything, but um, Colton Bolin, I don't know if it's Bolin or Bowling, but I'll have to look back. But he's awesome. He's really good. He's somebody who has not gotten um the attention he deserves yet. Um, that I've been following for a while. And I started following because he posted a video on Instagram of him covering Till the End of My Days. And he's great. He's really good. He's got a great voice and everything. But he I saw him uh post a cover of Stones the other day. So I'll have to go look around, see if I can find any other covers. But I've seen people cover like Round the Bend and um some guy from, I don't remember if he was Swedish or where he was from, I forget, but he covered 10 Chickens in a Dog Crate, and that was awesome. This guy in a totally different country covering a song that's not even like an official release. But yeah, it's always cool when you see people covering your songs, for
Yeah,
sure.
it must be weird. I mean, particularly with Sweden and places like that. I know Sweden have got a kind of an underground country scene. There's an act called the Countryside of Sound that are seriously kind of traditional country. So I know they have their own thing going on. So it doesn't surprise me too much that they're covering some Brennan Edwards here, man. It must be awesome to see that sort of thing online. But it's funny because I'm going on your YouTube as well. So if anyone checks out Brennan's YouTube, one of the posts that I shared on our kind of group page was your cover of Prince, Nothing Compares to You, because I thought that was such an awesome cover, because it's very hard to cover Prince in the first respect, but also to do it in your own way and to do it so perfectly. I thought it was worth sharing with our kind of Rugged Revival group, just to show you the stuff that you're putting out there that's slightly different. So, that was cool, and I think that blew up quite a bit as well on your YouTube page, didn't it?
Yeah, that one was doing really well for a while there. And it would kind of uptick from time to time. So that's always a good thing. where like randomly it'll kind of just pick back up. You start notice people checking it out more and finding it. But yeah, it's definitely hard to cover Prince. I really like the original version of that song. I like most all versions of that song that are out there. Um, but I'm not a Prince super fan or anything like that. I know some Prince super fans, but thinking about like some of my earliest musical memories or influences, you know, from like the very beginning to now, When Doves Cry is one of my favorite songs. I remember that song just always sticking out to me when I was a little kid. The crazy guitar intro, and just it's such a distinct sound, and just all together, I think that's a great song.
Awesome. Yeah,
I
he's
wish I
definitely a
could
pioneer.
cover it. I don't think I could cover it. I don't think I could do it any justice. You know what I mean? But that's a song that I really wish that I could do justice to.
Well, your first attempt didn't do too badly, so perhaps you should give it a go, mate, and see how you get on with that. You might need an additional guitarist to kind of help you with that one. But so what I mean, it's great, these stories you tell about meeting Jake Cohn and the likes of that. Is there any other artists you've been collaborating with recently?
Um, Not really. I mean, I have plans. Me and Cody Christian have got something in the works. Nothing that's we haven't started working on or anything, but we've got plans to do a little duo record together here soon.
Cool, man.
So can't really get into too much detail about it because there's not too much detail about it yet. But that's all I can say. We're planning on doing something soon.
So that might be in a pipeline. What else might you have kind of planned for 2025? Is there anything going on? Is it concentrating on your music now and touring?
When will this be live, this
This will
podcast?
be live. I forget what day we're on. I think we're on Wednesday today. So it'll be live this week. So soon.
Okay. Well, I don't know what not like it's a super big secret or anything, but I don't want to like jump the gun on the announcement for it, but we've got a lot more touring planned. Nothing nothing crazy like some of these other guys are doing just yet, but got a run of shows in late February that are getting pretty solidified. We have one confirmed show at the Basement in Nashville, the smaller one. I don't know what the identifying. There's two the basements. I'm pretty sure, but so that's confirmed, and we don't have the support figured out just yet, but it'll be. We got a run of tour dates coming in February, is what I can say about that, and we're working on some other ones, and um definitely going to try to do some more recording soon to keep the music flowing, and um going to try to focus on doing what I can, not what I can't.
That's a
So
good outlook, man. It's any future plans to come to the UK? Hopefully that will be good. I mean, I've noticed more recently because I keep moaning that not enough of the guys that I like or the ladies that I like come to the UK too often. It's always the kind of big stadium acts like Chris Stapleton. But I was talking online to Colby T. Helms recently because I noticed
that's
he's
that's so funny. You were just brought that up, about some of us guys coming over, and I had it in the chamber. I'm like, go see Colby T. Helms. Go see Colby T. Helms. Dude, he puts on a great show. Like
awesome.
it's impressive. Definitely anybody in the UK watching, make sure to go see Colby T. Helms. I don't know exactly where in the UK he's going to be, but here in the near future, he's got some UK tour dates. So
Yeah, I think it's March. I want to say March. He's got a few dates, but there's literally one up the road to me. So I thought I'd drop him a message online just to say, hey, would you be up for perhaps me popping over and having a chat? And I'm going to grab some tickets and go watch his show. So I'm glad you advocated for Colby, and he said he's puts on a good show. So it's more incentive for us to go and see him.
Oh, yeah, we've if for anyone listening in Virginia, it hasn't been like fully confirmed, so don't shoot me if anything falls through. You never know. But me and Colby are working on a show. I think it's December 13th here down in Southern Virginia. So that should be happening. But like I say, nothing completely solidified just yet that I know of. But what was the other thing? Yeah, definitely do an episode with Colby T. Helms. He's a super interesting guy. He's a land surveyor, where he works in land surveying. That's like a job you don't even hear about anymore. So I think that's super interesting. He just in general, a very interesting guy.
Yeah, it seems it from the stuff that I've read already. And I don't know if I've read it wrong, but it's like he lived in an underground bunker with his granddad or something like that. It was a.
I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. He's like a musical encyclopedia. He knows his stuff. He's very well. He's seasoned in his understanding of the music he plays, and the people that you should know about. So, and yeah, definitely, you'll definitely have some interesting talks with him.
Awesome, man. No, I will definitely be getting tickets, and for such a young guy to come over as well, it'd be really interesting to pop along and experience his show. But no, that's cool, Brennan. Look, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I know we had some technical difficulties along the way, but that's just the nature of doing things online these days, isn't it? And it gives me the opportunity to speak to the guys that I don't, I would never get the opportunity to otherwise if I wasn't living in the States. So look, I appreciate your time, buddy. Absolutely encourage everyone to go and listen to Brennan's music, all of it, and especially his new music. Where's the best place to find you? I know you're on Instagram and Facebook. Is there any particular kind of outlet that you prefer people to kind of head towards?
Any way you want to keep up with what I'm doing is fine with me. Facebook and Instagram mainly. I now have a TikTok, but I mean that's just mainly going to be little videos and stuff. If you want to know what I'm doing and everything, Instagram and Facebook. And like I say, I bought can't say I bought the domain name. I got my domain name for my website in our possession now. The website is coming soon. So yeah, I'll do my best to keep updates like a person should if they're in this business.
Until you get your social media manager in place, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Look, thanks again, and we'll raise a toast to the grit, the grind, and the revival. Cheers, everyone, for listening. Thanks again, Brennan. Take care, buddy.